Good morning and welcome to today's IG English live lesson. We are going to be looking at news articles in today's lesson. And for those of you new to live lessons, don't worry. It doesn't matter where you are in the course, you come to live lessons, you will always learn something. Okay. All right, so what I want to look at today specifically is this idea of transforming genres. And what I mean by that is when you change the genre or the style of a piece of writing and transform it into another style. And this is something that you will have to do in your exams. So you'll be given an extract of some kind, and then you'll be expected to transform it into another genre or style of writing. So we'll have a look at that today. And if you wanted to follow in your textbooks, or if you want to have a look at this a bit more closely later on for yourselves, this is where you'll find this information in your textbooks from around about pages 45 to 57 in the 5th edition, or pages 42 to 50 in the 4th edition. It just depends which textbook you have, but it covers the same material. Okay. So I've taken out little concepts from this section of the textbook so we can look at them together. Let's look more closely at this idea of genre transformation. Now, in the 4th edition of the textbook, it does not have this box called genre transformation, but you'll see through all the other little text boxes that it gives you this information in a roundabout way. So don't worry, if I find something that is not included in the 4th edition, I will let you know. Okay. So genre transformation. What is this all about? Well, the information and ideas from the passage should be used in a different style and structure from those of the original text. In other words, you're given an extract. It's going to be maybe it's in the form of, like today, a novel, and you're going to have to write a news report based on this novel extract. Okay, so you have to restructure it and tailor it to the specified task and audience. All right, so what do you have to do, and who are you writing for? So keep that in mind. You need to group and sequence. So sequence refers to an order, doesn't it? You need to group and sequence your selected material to show your understanding of the ordering of material required by the response genre. In other words, a newspaper report follows a certain sequence. Can you rework the information in the extract into that desired sequence? Okay. So this is not normally the order in which the original text presents the information to you. So like in today's lesson, we'll look at that novel extract, and you'll see that maybe we have to rework the order of the information presented in it in order to write the news report. So if you don't do this, if you just sort of replicate what's in the original, it counts as mechanical use of the text or even copying. So if you do not modify the structure and language of the original text. So in other words, try and reword things in your own way, use your own ideas. Well, put things, make sure that you use the main ideas, but you put it in your own words. Okay. Now let's look at a news report. Here is a task tip about news reports. News reports typically have the following stylistic features. You know, we always like to talk about language and style, and these are stylistic features that you will find in a news report. They have short sentences, that is simple or compound sentences, using connectives like and, but, so, because they've got a limited space to give over their ideas. So this is why they try to stick to simple or compound sentences. There will be short paragraphs, often consisting of only one sentence. So sometimes hopefully you've read a newspaper, an actual physical printed newspaper, and you'll see that because of the space issues, one sentence can make up an entire paragraph. Direct speech. They make use of direct speech to give realism and immediacy. So somebody is quoted as saying something, in other words. And then they even have reported speech, and there's a difference. Whereas somebody might be quoted saying something in direct speech, reported speech is what the reporter or the writer is telling you that somebody said. The locals of the area commented on how devastating the hurricane's effects were. Okay, so it's reported speech. And this is usually introduced by a variety of verbs, and we'll have a look at that as we go through the lesson. Strings of adjectives in front of nouns to describe them And usually that's what adjectives do. They usually go in front of nouns to describe them. But here you won't just have one adjective. Maybe you'll have a string of adjectives to get a point across. And then a lot of newspapers tend to use sensational vocabulary to give a sense of drama. Okay? So what I mean by this is, for example, maybe a headline to grab attention would be something like horrific, nightmarish ordeal in airplane hijacking, for example. Okay, so horrific, nightmarish, those kind of words would draw the reader's attention, and it's kind of sensationalist, emotive, and newspapers tend to do this so that they get readers, right? So here is the point that's come through. Is it called summarizing? Yes, yes. If you get a novel extract and you've got to put it into a newspaper format, you are essentially condensing and summarizing that information. And yes, you would be rewriting it in your own words. Okay, so good question. Yes, this is where summarization skills always come in handy. So creating a news report based on a novel extract, we'll look at that now. And the ideas that I'm looking at here have been adapted from the Cambridge IGCSE First Language English Teachers Resources, just so you know where the ideas have come from. A news report has a unique structure. Okay? It generally moves from the present, what is happening now. So it starts in the present, and then it moves to the past, what happened leading up to the present, and then it ends with a look towards the future. Okay, so there's this movement, present, past, future. And this is the typical format that you will find. There will be a headline of some kind. There will be the first paragraph, which gives you the facts. Facts which answer questions like what, when, where, and who. So give us a lot of information in a small, short space of writing. And then the paragraph 2 looks more at the background. Why has this come about? And it's all about a history and lead up to the event that is mentioned. Then paragraph 3 is the main account. How did the event happen? So look, we've got what, when, where, who, why, how did the event happen? What is happening now? You don't have to memorize this. It'll come naturally. The more you expose yourself to newspaper articles, the more you read, and the more you practice these kind of things. And then paragraph 4, quotations. This includes a mixture of direct and indirect speech and expert witness or official statements of some kind. As they usually move from the broad into the narrow, in other words, broader information coming into more specific information. That's what people do when they give quotes. They're giving something very, very specific, a specific idea. And because it's official or expert, it adds more weight to the ideas that they're giving. And then paragraph 5, for example, there can be more than these amount of paragraphs in a news report, but this is just a basic overview. Paragraph 5 is all about predictions. What will happen next? What procedures will be implemented? What consequences will follow in future? Okay, so do you see how it moves from the present and then to the past and then to the future? Okay, so these are all past generally. Right. That should give you a better idea of this movement in newspaper articles, or this structure. Now, this article that we're looking at this morning has come from page 51 or page 44. But this is not the main thing that I want to focus too much on today. I want to focus on the novel extract and us reworking it into a news report. Okay, I'm glad some of you have read this. It's quite an interesting article. But what I want to do is I want to use it as an illustration of this structure. Look at this idea of the fact there's a headline in bold. Okay, the headline is generally always in bold. Rescuers find trapped student cavers alive. Can anybody tell me what sensationalist or emotive language is used there? Anything that stands out? Good, yes, alive. That's important. Anything else that would draw your attention? Trapped, good, yes. Okay, so these two things are important. Oh no, student cavers were trapped, but it's okay. They were found alive. Let's hear their story. Let's hear all about it. Okay, good. So we've already got this idea of a condensed headline that summarizes things very, very quickly using emotional or sensationalist language. And then there's usually a picture, and sometimes you'll find there's a little bit of an explanation beneath the picture to give you a bit more background. But let's look at this idea of paragraph 1 facts: when, where, what, when, where, and who. So 8 Swiss potholers, sorry, let me just 8 Swiss potholers trapped in a cave in eastern France by rising water were found alive yesterday. Rescue teams were preparing to work through the night to bring them to the surface. Look at this short paragraph. We've already got a lot of information. There were 8 of them. They're Swiss. What they do? They're potholers. Where was it? Well, eastern France. What is their condition? Well, they're found alive. And rescue teams were preparing to work through the night to bring them to the surface. This is when it has happened. So through the night, this has happened. And then they move on to paragraph 2, which is background or why. A history and lead up to the event is mentioned. So, known as Bief du Perron, the cave, which runs for 380 meters, but only about 6 meters below the surface, is normally considered a beginner level site for potholers. So now we understand why they were there. It's a beginner level. It's about 380 meters, only 6 meters below the surface. Not a big deal. So trying to give a bit of background to what's been going on. And then from there, it moves into more specific information. And this will now involve the main account. Okay, how did the event happen? Well, the expedition had been part of a project for the students to develop their ability to face challenges. Oh, Shem, they really got a challenge there. Inexperienced, poorly equipped, and with one of the group being partially blind, the students were initially given little chance of survival. The potholers had entered the long, narrow cave on Wednesday, despite warnings from local people to stay away because rain in recent weeks had made the area dangerous. So we're given more background and we're given more information about how the event happened, and then it'll give more information of what is happening now. But I just want to move on to this idea of quotations and official statements. So we'll get the fuller story and who did what and when and where. And then here we have some direct speech. Okay. And I'm telling you this so that when you have to write your news article, you can include things like this. The group took refuge in a dry spot in a chimney. Eric Zipper, technical advisor to the Upper Rhine Cave Rescue Service, said. So here's an expert. Okay. And then it continues to explain their condition. And then we have another quote by local potholing experts describe the expedition as foolhardy, given the dangerous prevailing conditions. They were equipped only with walking shoes, jeans, and anoraks, M. Zipper said. And reported speech is also important. So we've had the direct and indirect speech, but reported things, I think that whole idea that we saw of the locals, warnings from local people to stay away. Okay, that's a form of reported speech in a way, because the reporter has found out that that's what the locals were saying. So we don't see them saying the exact words, but it's been reported to the writer. Oh, what are anoraks? Oh, interesting. Okay. All right, so anoraks is a kind of a rain jacket type thing. So it's generally made of not plasticky material, but waterproof material generally, and it has a hood. Okay, so that's an anorak. So it can protect you from the elements, but it's not exactly the warmest clothing out there. So yeah, nice question. Thank you. Thank you for stopping me to explain. It's good. And then we come down to the last section, which is about predictions. How we look forward to how the future is mentioned. Okay. So the French authorities are expected to start a legal inquiry into the conduct of the group's leader, a normal practice in such incidents. Right, so that's how we know what is going to happen. This is what's going to take place, and maybe there'll be a follow-up article at some point. But this is generally the structure of a newspaper. Okay, good. All right, so now that we've gone through that, I would like to move down to the sample extract from a novel. And I don't know if some of you have had a chance to read this. I did put a link in the forums to this extract, because I'm going to try and give you a heads up of the live lesson topics as we go along month by month. And so if you've had a chance to read this, that's great. It's an extract from a novel by the famous African author Chinua Achebe, from his novel Things Fall Apart. Okay, and this is all about a swarm of locusts. Okay, so I'm just going to make this a little bit more readable here. And bear with me as I read through the entire extract. Okay, so in your paper, you've been given a novel extract, and it's been told you to rewrite this as a report, and usually it will give you 3 bullet points to focus on as ideas to focus on in your news report. You know, this is the kind of thing that you could encounter. In this way, the moons and the seasons passed, and then the locust came. It had not happened for many a long year. The elders said locusts came once in a generation, reappeared every year for 7 years, and then disappeared for another lifetime. They went back to their caves in a distant land, where they were guarded by a race of stunted men. And then, after another lifetime, these men opened the caves again, and the locusts came to Umuofia. They came in the cold harmattan season, after the harvests had been gathered, and ate up all the wild grass in the fields. Okonkwo and the 2 boys were working on the red outer walls of the compound. This was one of the lighter tasks of the after-harvest season. A new cover of thick palm branches and palm leaves was set on the walls to protect them from the next rainy season. Okonkwo worked on the outside of the wall, and the boys worked from within. There were little holes from one side to the other in the upper levels of the wall, and through these Okonkwo passed the rope, or tie-tie, to the boys, and they passed it round the wooden stays, and then back to him. And in this way, the cover was strengthened on the wall. The women had gone to the bush to collect firewood, and the little children to visit their playmates in the neighboring compounds. The harmattan was in the air, and seemed to distill a hazy feeling of sleep on the world. Harmattan is a certain cold winter wind, by the way. Okonkwo and the boys worked in complete silence, which was only broken when a new palm frond was lifted onto the wall, or when a busy hen moved dry leaves about in her ceaseless search for food. And then, quite suddenly, a shadow fell on the world, and the sun seemed hidden behind a thick cloud. Okonkwo looked up from his work and wondered if it was going to rain at such an unlikely time of the year. But almost immediately, a shout of joy broke out in all directions, and Umuofia, which had dozed in the noonday haze, broke into life and activity. "Locusts are descending" was joyfully chanted everywhere, and men, women, and children left their work or their play and ran into the open to see the unfamiliar sight. The locusts had not come for many, many years, and only the old people had seen them before. At first, a fairly small swarm came. They were the harbingers sent to survey the land. And then appeared on the horizon a slowly moving mass, like a boundless sheet of black cloud drifting towards Umuofia. Soon it covered half the sky, and the solid mass was now broken by tiny eyes of light, like shining stardust. It was a tremendous sight, full of power and beauty. Everyone was now about, talking excitedly and praying that the locusts should camp in Umuofia for the night. For although locusts had not visited Umuofia for many years, everybody knew by instinct that they were very good to eat. And at last the locusts did descend. They settled on every tree and on every blade of grass. They settled on the roofs and covered the bare ground. Mighty tree branches broke away under them, and the whole country became the brown earth color of the vast, hungry swarm. Many people went out with baskets trying to catch them, but the elders counseled patience till nightfall, and they were right. The locusts settled in the bushes for the night, and their wings became wet with dew. Then all Umuofia turned out in spite of the cold harmattan, and everyone filled his bags and pots with locusts. The next morning, they were roasted in clay pots and then spread in the sun until they became dry and brittle. And for many days, this rare food was eaten with solid palm oil. Okay, and so here we have a picture of the locust swarming. Oh, and here's a comment about a biblical reference. Yes, one of the plagues of Egypt in the Bible, that's right, was locusts, the plague of locusts. But here, it's not particularly seen as a plague, is it, in this extract? It's actually seen as something positive because the locusts are a food source. All right, so if you were a reporter sent out to report on this happening, on this event, how would you go about doing that? And what would you include and what would you not include in your news report? So first of all, let's think of a heading for this event. What headline would you want to give it? What headline would we give it? Rare locust joyous arrival? Oh, lovely. Good, yes. The swarming food. Very good. Those are both brilliant. Okay. I like both. What I like about this, the rare locust joyous arrival, I like the fact that that word rare says it all. Yes, this is not something that happens very often. It's quite rare. And it's not, in fact, it's not seen as a plague here. It's seen as something joyous. Very good. Okay, so that's great. And then the swarming food, that's brilliant because that word swarming would just, you know, pull your attention. And swarming food, what do you mean the swarming food? We'd want to find out more, so that would draw us in. Good. And here, yes, the locust wonder. Yes, this is something unusual. It's a great grand event in the view of the village. So it's the locust wonder, and they just cover everything. They just come out of nowhere and they're just covering all this ground. So it is a wonder. And then, yes, locusts bring happiness. Okay, so I'm running out of space here. All of these would work. Okay, locusts bring happiness. How strange. How has this happened? We'd want to find out more. So well done. Excellent. Good, guys. Any of those would work. Well done. So now we have our headline. We have to start identifying the main ideas that we would want to bring across in a news report. Remember, you want to try and keep it factual, right? So we don't want to bring in information that is superfluous, that does not contain anything of any relevance or import for the reader. And so the teacher's resource have suggested some of the facts that you could pull out based on this novel extract. And you'll see that it's quite condensed ideas. I'll show you the first four. Locusts swarmed over the village of Umuofia a few days ago. You would have to work that out. First of all, remember, you want to say what? It's a who, what, where, when. So it's locusts who swarmed where over the village of Umuofia, when, a few days ago. So we've given those basic background facts. And then we give a bit more information. They appeared in a thick cloud in front of the sun. Now, do we have to say that? Well, I suppose we could, because it's unusual that the sun would be blocked out. Maybe you could make it sound a bit more interesting by saying that the swarm was so thick that it blocked out the sun, for example. So let's just look at this opening section to see how you would have garnered some of those facts from this particular part. In this way, the moons and the seasons passed, and then the locusts came. It had not happened for many a long years. It hasn't happened for a while. Perhaps you could put that in the news report at some point in the main part of the story. The elders said locusts came once in a generation, reappeared every year for 7 years. Here's facts. They reappear every year for 7 years, and then disappeared for another lifetime. And then there's some sort of myth or legend that has arisen from this event, and then after it goes into the myth, there's another fact. They come in the cold harmattan season, so it's a specific season they come in the winter season, after the harvests have been gathered. So all the crops have been gathered, and they ate up all the wild grass in the fields, and perhaps because that's where the grass grows in between the leftover stalks of the crop that has been built, or that has been grown, sorry. Could what the elders said be used as reported speech? Yes, good. That's exactly right. So it was reported that the elders of the village had seen this once before in their lifetime, and they knew that it was a special event. Yes, so excellent. That's where your reported speech would come in. Very nice. And so we would take some of this information, but we wouldn't use all of it. Obviously, a novel is going to have more of an artistic impression of things, or give more of an artistic representation of things, and that's why it would pull on this idea of this legend, this myth. But this is probably not something we're going to include in our newspaper report. And because we are running out of time, I think I must just read through the condensed ideas, and you can see whether you would rework them in some way, whether you would include them or not. So locusts swarmed over the village of Umuofia a few days ago. They appeared in a thick cloud in front of the sun. A small swarm descended at first, followed by a much bigger swarm. So this is how it all unfolded. One villager commented that it was a tremendous sight, full of power and beauty. Now, if we go back to this section here, where was that power and beauty? I'm just going to look for it here. Here. Soon it covered half the sky, and the solid mass was now broken by tiny eyes of light, like shining stardust. It was a tremendous sight, full of power and beauty. Now, we're not told that a villager said this, but this writer reworked it in a clever way to say that that was how a villager described this whole thing. So there's direct speech coming in. And, normally in a newspaper article, as we've seen suggested, you probably wouldn't have this kind of, you wouldn't have the direct speech straight away. You might have it later on in the article. But that is not to say that you can't have it straight away. Why not? Why can't we know that it was a tremendous sight full of power and beauty? Maybe now we want to find out more because it was such a tremendous sight. So there is some flexibility in the structure of the newspaper article, I would argue. But if you want to follow the conventions, that's also fine. The villagers were pleased at the locust's arrival because they are seen as a delicacy, as a food source, or as a source of nourishment, we could say. It wasn't so much a delicacy as it was to do with nourishment. Okay. Some inhabitants had never seen a locust swarm before. It's only the elders who remember. There is a local belief that once the locusts appear, they will do so for 7 consecutive years. We've reworded that idea of them appearing 7 years in a row. Okay. What else do we have? Most locust swarms appear in the cold harmattan season to clear the fields of any edible remains after the harvest. We could have mentioned the grass, the wild grass. By the time evening came, the locusts had settled on every available surface. The villagers knew to wait until dusk to collect the locusts when their wings became wet with dew. The villagers filled numerous bags and pots with locusts. The locusts were then roasted and dried and eaten with solid palm oil. The locusts will provide a number of substantial meals for the villagers in the days to come, which is a reference to the future. Okay, so sorry, we have run out of time. But hopefully this shows you the kinds of things you can extract from a novel and then rework into a newspaper idea, a newspaper report, condensing all your ideas.